Hi, welcome back to another episode of ColdstreamRodshop. I'm Derek Fraser. In this week's episode, we're working on the International Roadster. At the end of the last episode, we got the quarter panels and the upper and lower deck lid, as you see in the bottom there, epoxy prime. We're getting ready to put them back on the Roadster. One of the things with the small shop here, I don't really technically have a paint booth or anything, so I have to shove everything in the corner, drop down to plastic and do whatever painting I have to do. So right now I'm going to do the big shuffle. I'm going to move that over there, move the 40 Plymouth forward, get everything back in position, and then we'll get on to putting these pieces onto the International Roadster. So here's the first quarter panel welded in. Hopefully you can see here where I've done the spot welds along the side of the unit fender well where the originals were done. I'm going to grind those smooth. Basically drilled a, I think a 7 32nd hole, had the vice grips clamped on them, and then just basically welded and made sure I had full penetration all the way through. The other place that it's welded is at the bottom of the B pillar. So I've welded this tab right there in, and then on the outside in there, I've welded, oh, there we go, welded this here to the side of the subrail. Now there is a second support, as I've mentioned before, right here. Well, I could weld it in right now, but typically what I do is I wait until the whole body is put together and I've squared everything up, and then I will weld those in place. So right now what I'm going to do is I'm going to set the time-lapse camera up, and I will show putting the other quarter on the other side, and then we'll weld that on too. Well, I hope you can see from the time lapse me putting the driver's side quarter panel on, welding the B pillar in place, putting that upper deck lid panel that I just made in the last episode. I put quarter 20 nuts and bolts underneath and kind of snugged it in. Right now I've got vice grips there, just kind of holding it in place until I tighten those nuts and bolts. And then across the back here right now, I have put in the lower tail pan. I've basically positioned it. I've gone off of my other Roadster, took some measurements, and I kind of got it marked and all clamped in place. So what I've got to do now is I've got to go from behind. There was holes that I drilled in the quarter panels. I'm going to take a black marker and I'll make a little dot through the hole, and then I'll drill the holes in the flanges for the lower deck lid panel. And then that also goes in with 4 quarter 20 nuts and bolts on either side. So going to carry on with that, and we are starting to look like a 32 Roadster. Well, I was starting to get ahead of myself a little bit, getting a little much done from the last time I did this clip. As of this moment, what I've done, I've got all of the 16 bolts in place that hold the upper deck lid in place and the lower deck lid. I've done my realignment here, tapping it in place. I've got a little bit of a dolly work there from when I made this panel. That's done. We've got some good alignment here. On the Brookfields, I found that on this right quarter here, for some reason, this profile was always high. I think out of 5 quarters, driver's side quarters, I've had to kind of split this and shape it because the 2 sides didn't exactly match. And maybe that's because I always had the seconds. But anyway, this one was okay. I had to adjust this piece, but now we've got some nice smooth transition from one quarter to the other, so we're good there. So I'll show you some of the bolts that we put in place. Right up there, you can see 3 of them. Now there was 3 new bolts, but I was actually able to salvage the original 32 nut and the bolt from this position. So I have it on this side and I have it on that side. The rest of them are missing, so you can see up there where the 3 bolts are, if it stays in focus. And then if you look at the rear lower deck lid, right over there, you should be able to see the 4 bolts that hold it in place. I drilled those and put those in place. So the lower deck lid is in. I've done some preliminary checks too between the 2 B pillars. I'm probably within a 16th to a 32nd diagonally between the top of the B pillar and the floor, which is good for now. Our intention is to put an X member here, a bolt-in one that should tie everything in and keep it nice and square, because unfortunately these Roadsters, they tended to wobble or jiggle a little bit if you didn't reinforce them. The next thing that I'm working on is I am putting the Subrail extensions in. So I've got this one kind of clamped in place. I've got it cleaned up. These were Subrail extensions that I made in an episode probably over a year ago when I was doing one of the Brookfield Roadsters. So there is one of the Subrails that I haven't drilled the hole in. I haven't fitted yet. So I made these in 2 pieces, essentially from a wooden buck. I sandwiched the sheet metal between 2 pieces of wood, pounded the edges over with a pattern, and then I just welded them together. Fortunately, I had really good Brookfield ones that I was able to chuck these against, and they work. They fit really well. So first step is basically fitting it up underneath the floor there, and then drilling this body mount hole through here. And then as you can see over here, I've got a couple set of clamps onto it. So what I'll be doing is I'll be drilling a couple holes here and doing the spot welds to hold that in place. And then along the body here, I think Ford spot welded them. I'm not going to spot weld them. What I've been doing is I basically just come along and I put a couple, I'll tap this in as close as I can to the inner fender well, and I'll put a couple welds here along the side, and that's what we've been doing when we did the Brookfield ones, and that's sufficient for these 2. So Carry on finishing this one. We'll get that one wrapped up, and then what we'll do is probably try and work on, there's a floor extension piece that goes from the back of the floor to the tail pan or lower deck lid. So I do have to make one of those up. I didn't have one made up from the last time. So it's relatively quick. I'll do a time lapse of me making that piece up. I've got all the dimensions. So we'll get the other Subrail extension in, and then we'll be working on the floor pan extension, I think is the correct terminology for it. So follow along. We're making lots of progress here. So there's the rear floor pan extension. I didn't use the one we took apart from the original rear section because that one was a reproduction. So instead of trying to clean a reproduction up, I can just make a reproduction probably faster than what I can clean the original one up, and wouldn't have to deal with any holes or anything into it. I'd already made these up quite a few times before. Made several sets up, and I had a drawing on file anyways to make it. So it's made out of 18 gauge steel. As you saw, basically I used a step die to do the outside flange. Then I used a half-inch bead, I think it's a half-inch bead die to go along the center, make the beads into it. And then I used a tipping die to bring this edge up and then finish it off over on the wooden stump with a hammer. There was a little bit of distortion because of the beading, But I mean, I could have pre-stretched that, but simply I just went on to the shrinker and I just shrunk the metal till it was flat. Same thing across the back. The spine, when I folded it over, it bent a little bit, but we just I just shrunk the metal until it was back into shape. So anyway, it didn't take very long to do. I think it was all told half an hour. Probably you're going to see 2 or 3 minutes of time lapse of me making it. So at the moment where I'm at, I have one Subrail extension in there. I did go ahead and drill through the quarter panel and mimic the spot welds, kind of like the way Ford did. Kind of caved in on that, even though I didn't do that on my own Roadster. Trying to do this one a little bit better. And then over on the other side, I've started the process. I have to spot weld it in place. What I'm going to do before I do the final spot welds across the back of the floor there onto the Subrail is I'm going to slip that floor pan extension in, and then we'll get her all going at the same time. There is one other piece that we're going to need to put in, and it's there's a support piece. Again, made these up quite a while ago. I've got 3 or 4 of them here, and essentially this piece goes, hopefully we can do this. It will go there. Basically, it supports the back of the floor, and it ties everything in. So I'll be putting that in place at the same time. So follow along. We're going to wrap this up and get the rear floor pan extension all welded in and tie the back end of the 32 Roadster here. Sorry, I'm stepping over tools on the floor. So we'll show you in a few minutes everything all put together. Here we are. I have the rear tail pan, lower deck lid, whatever you want to call it, all different names, lower boot lid, depending on where you live, all put in place. The floor pan extension is all spot welded in place, and then I put the support in place that I just described earlier there. Then I went around and I made sure that all the spot welds on the side, instead of putting gobs of weld here like is on my own Brookfill, and if you go look at the Brookfills, they just basically weld here. I actually drilled through the other side and kind of imitated a spot weld. Someone asked me if I should invest in a spot welder, and maybe. We'll see. Depends on how much more I keep doing of this, and so far getting to do lots of it. So in this episode, one other thing. I had made up some rumble lid supports. This car is not a rumble seat car. One thing I'm wondering, any of you 32 guys out there, did the cars with a duck lid still have the rumble lid supports in them anyways? Most of the Brookfills I've seen, they do, but I've seen some cars that don't. So maybe people remove them. Maybe you put them in anyways because of upholstery. I'm not really sure. I have them. We're trying to figure out whether I should or shouldn't put them in this because we're trying to make it as close as we can to an original 32 Roadster, or at least look like it. So I have them. Potentially, I may even have some originals. I've got to go look through the not junk box, the miscellaneous parts box out there in the other garage and see if we have some originals. So anybody has feedback on that, let me know. I'd like to know what you think. So we still have more to do on the 32 Roadster. There's at least 1 or 2 more episodes, but a whole bunch of parts have finally come in for the 40 Plymouth over there, which is another project we've had. We've been stalled out over and over and over again. So more than likely next week we'll be working on the 40 Plymouth, so it might be an extra week before we do some more work on the 32 Roadster. But we're going to finish it. We're going to put the deck lid in. We'll put all the other miscellaneous pieces in, and then eventually we're going to epoxy prime the body too for the customer. So anyway, that's it for this week. I hope you enjoyed it. Please like, share, tag, and subscribe. Send me your comments and let me know what you think about the rumble lid supports. Everybody take care and have a great week. Take care.